This is Leslie, and she's going to be my guest today talking about, how do you say it,
The
Enneagrams?
Enneagram. Like it's not animal
If you
grams.
try to read it
Like
and you go, Enneagram.
so it comes from the Greek, from the word nine,
Okay.
Enne in
Oh,
Greek.
okay. So you didn't even know
So
that.
Enneagram, and it's
Oh.
9 numbers. So
Mm.
there you go.
Well, I'm super, um,
Intrigued is the word you're looking for.
yeah, like I'm kind of just enamored by all of it. So my first questions are, how does this differ from like your disc profiles to your
Mm-hmm.
personality test, but then also
Mm-hmm.
like people going, oh, it's like astrology, like no one can be blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
definitely not an astrology lane. I know that because it's not like everybody's like that. But in the sense that you take the test and then like say all nines are like nines or all sixes are like
Mm-hmm.
sixes. Tell me like how that, because what did I tell you I was? Do you remember?
I think you told me that you were an 8.
Yeah, I think that was
That was what
right.
you took the test for. And I'll talk, I mean, like we can talk about the test itself.
That's what I had is I had
Yeah.
all of those
Yeah,
screenshots
yeah,
so that
yeah.
I would be able to like talk to you about those things.
Yeah.
But we'll
No.
talk about that later. Let's just get
Yeah.
the basics
Yeah.
down so that way people understand the basics. And then I am kind of curious how you found it because I'll tell you real quick because mine's much shorter than yours. I found it because in real estate sales and someone was like, oh, you need to get this book. It'll help you with your sales. And I'm like, I still don't see how that's possible.
Do you know what the book was?
Yeah, it was like something about working your way backwards or
The
the
Road
road back
Back to
to,
You?
yeah.
The
And
Road Back to
I
You,
just like
Ian
could not
Crum.
get into it because
Yeah.
I did not understand it. And like anything with my
Yeah.
ADHD brain, as soon as my brain goes, I don't get it, I'm like, I
You're
shut
like, I'm
down.
done. I'm
Like
done. Like,
the
no
book,
more.
the book
That's
is
it.
sitting, yes,
Out.
it's sitting in my
That's
house
great.
somewhere. I
That's
might
great.
even have it in the donate pile because I'm like, I'm never going to do
You can
this.
give it to me because I don't have it. And that would be
Okay.
great.
Oh my God, it'll be a great Christmas present.
Yeah, just pass it on.
Okay,
Say
I'm
Merry
going to do that
Christmas
for
to
sure.
me.
Merry
That'd be
Christmas to
good.
you. So, how
So
did you
awesome.
find it?
Well, so I found it about 5 years ago, right before COVID. And so a friend of mine who I joked, she was kind of like my, if I wanted to know about a book or what the newest book was, she always kind of, she has her ear to that ground on things. And so she was like, oh my gosh, you need to know about the Enneagram. I bet you are, which really we shouldn't be going, I bet you are,
Yeah.
because this is so much about internal work.
Yeah.
And you have to self-assess and you have to figure out what really represents who you are. So the question that you ask around like what's different about it, I think there's a lot of language and there's a lot of different modalities to help you understand yourself. I remember taking the Myers-Briggs, and the guy that was doing the administration of it said, this is like a snapshot of who you are in this moment. All your thinking, all your feeling is all playing into it. But he was saying that it was changeable. And so that over time you may, grow and change. And I think
Yeah.
that that's true for just about anything.
You
But there
should.
is something that's core about the Enneagram. And it's and there are different metrics, both in health and unhealth, and how you behave in disintegration or integration, or the other words would be stress and like ease. And so there's a lot of interconnectivity. And the other thing I think that's different, well, there's lots of things that are different. The other thing that's different about it is you're dealing with your core, your inner wounds, the things that influenced you as a child. There's something about what you experienced as a child that leads you to not feel safe. And a lot of the Enneagram points to the things that you did to cope to make yourself feel safe.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's helping you go back and understand, like the things that you're hiding are what sometimes is referred to as your shadow self. And so when you're looking at this is helping you kind of point to how to go back and do some of your inner work. Now, I will caveat this and say that even though I've been working in this for about 5 years, this is a lifetime's worth of work.
Right, right.
And I am sure that somebody listening to this would be like, okay, yeah, she said that wrong.
No,
There's a
no.
lot there's a lot that's here. And
I think that's why it was so intimidating for me.
Yeah.
And also just to kind of like piggyback on what you said,
Yeah.
people shouldn't be saying, oh, I bet you're a blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Because not, and I didn't know this until much later in life, but not everybody presents on the outside what they're authentically
100%.
are, right?
100%.
So
yeah,
you'll be like, oh my God, just because you're in public and you act this way,
Right.
you're a 3.
Right.
And then, but they're not because
it's
they're not being authentic.
And it's about your internal motivation. And
Oh,
so
yeah, the internal motivation.
That's another thing. Like nobody,
it's like your why, right?
It is your why. And so nobody can, like, one of the things that's happening right now is because the Enneagram is gaining in popularity again, because it's been around for a long time, is that you're finding it encapsulated in memes. And so memes sometimes are dealing specifically with behaviors. And so behaviors can look very similar. Like,
Right.
you know, it's the same danger that we run into when we're dealing in interpersonal relationships, where we look at somebody else's behavior and we assume that we know why that other person is doing what they're doing. And what we're really doing is we're projecting why we would be doing that behavior, what we would be thinking, right? Oh, 100%. Like,
What are you talking about? I know my husband does that because XYZ.
right. Let's talk about growth space and awareness. Yeah. So we project.
Don't you come in here
Right.
and give me any of that malarkey that I can't use in my arguments with my husband. I'm just kidding. I'm
Nice.
totally kidding.
Growth moment. It's a fucking growth moment. I probably shouldn't say that.
No, you're totally fine.
Yeah.
I am a safe space and you are able to curse. As
Nice.
far as I know,
Nice.
I am not editing you.
Well,
Unless I'm required to.
So great. So no, I think that that's true though too, because like people will look at behaviors and be like, oh, you make a list of goals. Oh, you must be a 1 or a 3. Oh, you are a high achiever. You must be this or that. Oh, you're a bull in a china shop and don't take any crap off of anybody. You must be this, you know. And so they'll look at the behavior, but the behavior is only a reflection or an expression of the motivation. And the motivation could be very different. So like, and the other part of this that I think is different. So like if we're talking about Myers-Briggs or we're talking about the DISC, we're talking about like an ESTJ. We're talking about dualistic metrics, right? So we're talking about a spectrum of, are you an extrovert or are you an introvert, and where on that spectrum do you fall? And, you know, that kind of goes through the whole thing. But with the Enneagram, first of all, the goal is to become an expression of all of the numbers. So that's kind of like a well-rounded person is trying to learn how to become more and more integrated. And using what you're understanding is going to help you to become more integrated. So it's all of your little indicator lights for your soul, right? And so then the other part of it is there are, there's all these different little triads that are a part of it. So without.
That's where I kind of got lost. It's
Yes.
because like, oh, like I'm an
Yes.
8, but then also like my 7's really high, I think, because it was like over here. And
Right.
then I had like one over here, but like I definitely didn't fall into like the typical, what they say, the women, like if you get a false, like there's like couple different ones that fall false for like specifically for women or something, because we're like trained to
like
be
a
a
2
specific,
is a giver is kind of the thing. Yeah. So it's fascinating, and we can just, there's so many different
Oh my God,
layers
we could
to
talk
this.
for like an eternity,
Yeah,
probably.
for sure. So high level, there's your number, which is whatever is kind of the thing that most deeply expresses your core motivation, your core fear, and that'll come out in behaviors. But then there are the number that's next to you. That can be your wing. There's a lot of different, there's a couple of different theories about wings. One is that you so it's almost like some of the behavior of the wing colors the expression of your primary number. And one of the theories is that the first half of your life you lean more into one wing, and then the second half of life you lean
that's
more into another.
fascinating.
And so that's one of the ideas. One is that you move into both of your wings depending on the situation. That's another theory. So So wings are interesting. You might hear.
I found them confusing because
Right.
the indicator on mine was like saying that my wing would be something different than it was, and my wing was like in the same triad. I think you called it a triad.
Yeah, so
What'd you
like
call it,
if you
triangle? I don't
have,
know.
so it's always going to be one of the numbers next to you is your wing.
But does it have to be in the other section? Or is it like, because you know how like some of them are grouped together? Like, is it 7, 8, 9 are all in the same one? And
Oh, so now we're talking about the other,
Or was it
triads.
7,
So-
8, 9 were together? And
So we'll just show a
yeah.
fun little, I don't
me
know,
see if I can get
you
closer.
can see. This is just an example of the Enneagram. And so,
Why am I so bad at this? Is it? I don't think it's focusing. Oh well. Anyways,
yeah, but
you can look it up, or I can
yeah.
put like a little online
yeah,
thing.
you
on
can
it.
put a little thing on it. But so your wing is the one that's next to you.
Can I see that again real
Yeah.
quick while you're talking?
So your wing is the one that's next to you. Any of these chapter headings you can find. Then there are numbers that you go to in stress and integration. So those are where those little arrows are. Like, so if it's almost like if you're really, really stressed, and stressed is probably not the right word, that you can go down into those other numbers and pull, or you start behaving, you have behaviors that are like it. Like, so a concrete example is that for a 3, which is what I am, which is an achiever, when I get stressed or overwhelmed and it becomes too much, my number that I go to is a 9, and a 9 can become kind of lethargic. So I may just shut out of life. Like I may just be like, okay, I'm done. A classic example for me would be like in college when it was finals week and I was supposed to be like studying and getting ready for finals. I would get to a point where the stress and the pressure of that was so high that I'd just go to the lake. I'd be like, this is it. We've done all what we can do. We're just out of here, And so there's kind of a threshold
Is it like
point.
throwing in the towel, like throwing up the white flag?
A little bit. But that's just to give you an idea of like a 3 can go to 9 in stress. Or
See, I didn't feel like mine connected that way. So, like, I see what you're saying. Like, your 3 connects to the 9. I did not feel like mine connected. Like, I think I was like 8 and 3, and those don't connect. Like, they're saying 8 and 2.
And so here's the other thing. Like, and I'll just backtrack a little bit to the tests.
Okay.
Because tests, when you take them, are really just to kind of point you in a direction. And so it gives you a place to start out of the 9 numbers. But just because you take a test and it says, oh, my highest score is an 8, that may or may not be exactly true. And so the work is really to evaluate it, to look at the wings, to look at where it connects, to think about the one of the other things that we haven't talked about is 3 numbers are in what's called the heart triad, and 3 numbers are in the head triad, and 3 numbers are in the gut triad. And that has to do with how you take in information from the world. And so, like if you're quick at being like, well, my gut tells me that we don't need to do that, and you lean heavily into feelings around that, not like feelings like emotion, but like internal signals.
An internal, almost like an intuition, people would call it.
But gut intuition. Well, then you're probably in the gut triad. And so that
where's that at? What's the gut triad? The observer, loyal skeptic?
So the heart triad is 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
And then the head triad is 5, 6, and 7. And then the gut triad is 8, 9, and 1.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense because
so-
that aligns. But what
yeah.
does this mean, epicure?
So they have gone through and they've given different names.
Okay.
And different Enneagram philosophies will give some differences in names. So like
Yeah, I noticed that.
the 9 will say like the peacemaker or the mediator. The 7 will say the epicure. The 3 will sometimes be called the achiever.
Yeah, I heard you say achiever a lot, and this one says performer. Okay.
Yeah, performer. Yeah. So there's one more dynamic that's in this 2, and it's how you relate to individuals or group. And so I can be a 3, and I can either relate to people, like my primary relationships that are key might be sexual, which is also referred to one-on-one. So the dynamic is like the primary relationship for me is like a one-on-one connection. That's going to rule kind of how I show up in the world. Or it can be social, which can be kind of this group dynamic thing. Like the family unit is kind of like the health of the family unit is the thing that drives me, or how I show up, or like the health of the organization that I'm a part of, or the like if I'm involved in a club or a church, or like if I'm a leader in those things, then my focus ends up being more towards the group and making sure that the group is functioning and that I'm a part of the group, you know. Whereas for me, like I'm very much a one-on-one. I'm very much a sexual 3. And so my relationships, my one-on-one, this is my sweet spot. I want to be in here. I want to make sure you're okay. I want to make sure I'm okay, that we're okay together. So there's social, sexual, and all of a sudden I'm having self-preservation is the last one. Self-preservation is I'm most concerned about if I'm okay, if I have what I need. And these
Do those people appear like selfish maybe?
It depends. It depends. It depends on it could, depending on the number and the expression of that. Like but
Because like maybe they're not, but like it's like a safety thing. So they seem like they're always focused on themselves, or no?
and it can be. There's also something called a countertype, which every number every triad, heart, head, or gut has a countertype, which means that they express the opposite of that thing. So
they're like giving off false signals, but like, do they express opposite of what they are, or they are opposite of what they express?
So it's interesting. So like a seven tends to be someone who has a lust for life, and like there's always a vice that's kind of associated with it.
Really?
Yeah. So like for a 3,
Yeah.
the vice is deceit, and it's usually about not that they're deceiving others, but they're deceiving themselves about themselves.
Interesting.
And so 7, there's this deep need for making sure that they have enough. And it's almost like everything that comes to them comes through a sieve and they can't hold it. It's never enough.
Is it like a scarcity mindset?
There's a little bit of that. And so the vice would be gluttony.
Really?
And so a countertype of a 7 is not that's the social 7 in this dynamic. And so that 7 is not gluttonous toward themselves, trying to feed themselves. They're gluttonous. I was trying to say eschew, but that's not the word. They shun gluttony towards themselves because that's selfish and wrong. And so they outpour a lot towards others. So they give out. So that's the countertype of what you would normally think of somebody that has a high needs. So when we talk about how this is different, it's different because of how deep the rabbit hole goes.
Oh my God. I feel like I've just like been dumped off in Alice in Wonderland.
Right?
And I'm falling down the hole and I'm like, this is not anything I accept. I don't even know where I am anymore.
And so really that's why you just start with like learning about the numbers and seeing what resonates. And so the tests that you can take will start with reading characteristics, reading motivations, thinking about it. And so when you get your test back and you've got your top 3 highest, that's when you start looking at those top 3 highest. And then you think about, well, do I have gut reactions, or am I like super intuitive about how people are feeling? Or do I sit there and overthink everything all the time and like it's all about logic? And to some degree, we all do all of those things.
Right.
But what's the primary thing for you? So what's interesting about this book, this was kind of the second book that I got a hold of. What's interesting about this is you go through and you read some characteristics, you read some numbers, but then in the second page of it, it'll talk about lookalike numbers that are often mistaken for each other for various things. So really the only key difference is core motivation. And so you really have to dive in. So
it's like you turn the dial a little bit
in the room and you have like mud on your shirt and you put the flashlight on, you only see what's in the light. And then when, you clean that off and you get a bigger light, then you see more. And I mean, I know that's kind of like a negative sort of visual, but I think that's true. Like you understand a certain amount, and then that becomes the foundation on which that you can grow more. And so it's like very incremental. But I spent a good couple of years when I first started feeling like I was a 3, and then I went and sat with an Enneagram coach who, after like talking through me and giving a test, she felt like I was a social 7, which was interesting. And that sent me kind of on a year of really exploring the difference between
A social 7.
Yeah. So
versus a social 3.
versus a sexual 3. So social is about the group, right?
Social is group.
And sexual is one-on-one dynamic. And self-preservation is about how you feel about your safety and taking care of yourself and having what you need.
So does everyone score in all of these groups or what? Or like,
So it's like tiers. Like there's going to be one that's your dominant and one that you fall into next, and then one that you suppress. And the goal is to bring all of those in. Yeah.
ew, I wonder what I suppress.
It's fascinating. So my aunt has
You're not supposed to be like, what do you think?
Yeah.
But my natural inclination is, what do you think?
Here's something that I think is interesting. My aunt, who's worked in this for 20 years.
Okay, so your aunt is she the one who kind of got you into this at all?
No, my friend who mentioned it, and now she doesn't really even do anything
Your friend?
with it.
That would be something I would do. I'd be like, oh, I'm hyperfixating right now. ADHD,
yes, exactly.
hyperfixation. And what's next?
100%.
And my husband's like, yes, I would agree.
Yes. So she did this thing that she said, which image do you relate to the most? Like just instinct. Which image do you relate to the most? A bird building a nest, a group of prairie dogs, or fire?
Fire.
See, me too. Okay, so
Dude, I had the funniest meme or like video that I saw on or like one of the socials.
Yeah.
And it was like, Scorpio, I'm so nice. I would never hurt anyone. Also, Scorpio with the dragon. And it's like burning down everything. And I was like, I feel so seen right now.
that's awesome.
Because I am. Like,
Are you a Scorpio?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like I literally love everyone, and I always go love first. Not that I can't be triggered into anger because everyone can. But truly, I could not have a dragon because I would literally
Like
just
burn down everything.
Burn down everything
And then
when
you'd
I'm in
regret
one
it
of
in the
those
morning?
moments.
Yes.
Yes, right.
Yep.
See, you understand.
So, okay. So here's the thing. And she said that this is just a fun little exercise, but she has found it to be true to point at whether you're sexual, social, or self-preservation.
But I always say sexual first. I don't know why, but that's just because that's my, and that's not even, it doesn't even line up the same. But that's just because.
So if fire is what you are related, if that's the image that calls to you first, then you might be sexual one-on-one. Like you,
I think I am for sure.
Which
would explain why I want to do podcasts, because I just want to have like the one-on-one with people all the time.
Right? It's
but I like to engage with all the people.
100%.
But like at different times.
Well, and like, again, they're stacked, right? They're stacked. So there's one that you're like strong into, like me, it's one-on-one. But that doesn't mean that I can't do a group really well. Now, like maybe self-preservation is repressed, which, maybe I don't think about taking care of myself. And I'm just using that as an example. But the goal, again, is about alignment and about balance and about bringing them all, not suppressing one, but being aware and like working in all of those things, which I don't really find in some of these other modalities.
Yeah.
I don't really find the discussion about growth and healing and wounds and motivation and shadow self.
It's all like, you are what you are, and you need to
here you
learn
go.
to work around it, and no one should try to be better.
And it becomes like your badge.
Yes.
I'm an ESTJ. Oh, actually, I'm an ESTFJ because my thinker feeler is right on the line. But
What did you just say? Yes, you should.
ESTFJ.
Is that real life?
Myers-Briggs.
Is this? Okay. Is that like a Myers-Briggs thing?
So
I clearly have never
extrovert.
taken that test.
Yeah. Well, extrovert.
Yeah.
As opposed to introvert.
Okay.
And then
Do
T.
they have ambivert on there? Because that's a new one.
But again, I think it can be like a sliding scale between it, but it's still duality focused, right? So thinker, let's see, I think it's ES, sensing versus perceiving. So I'm more concrete, boots on the ground, as somebody who might be more theoretical. So extrovert, ES, sensing, thinker, feeler. That's the other duality. And mine sits right in the middle of that. Like, it depends on.
She likes to straddle the line.
Oh my gosh. There's an appropriate moment for that for sure. So
You can't take me anywhere.
so good.
I will always find some moment for an innuendo.
Oh, it's good. It's good. Now, the only thing I can't remember is like what the other side of judging is. But
Oh shoot, I'm in the camera.
let's see. INFP, judging.
What's the P stand for?
I don't remember. IN.
Do I get to fill in the blank of what I want?
It's perceiving, because the other one's intuitive. Yeah, sensing versus intuitive, and then judging, perceiving. Oh my gosh. See, the Myers-Briggs is not my favorite, clearly. And it's like so old.
Girl, we were just speaking like
Did I just go
back
into Greek?
in 2004 kind of lingo, like when we
Yes.
started making up ways to cuss when we were in the other room and at work. And
Right.
I swear to God, me and my coworker made this up. And now it's everywhere. So clearly people think the same, or things catch on, because we were like, how can we cuss at work? STFUB. And that was, shut the fuck up, bitch. We were in the other room and at work. And
Right.
I swear to God, me and my coworker made this up. And now it's everywhere. So clearly people think the same, or things catch on, because we were like, how can we cuss at work? STFUB. And that was, shut the fuck up, bitch.
That's hilarious.
And then we came up with STFUBMF.
That's awesome.
No, it was ST, and then we got it even worse. STFU CSMF.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, so you know what I'm saying?
I do. Do you know what? I always use the names of Russian composers. Like Shostakovich.
Why are you so smart?
I
You're
don't
way
know.
too smart for
I
me.
was a music major, so
You
that
are
comes
way
from-
too smart. I
don't
feel
know.
dumb.
I don't know. You should not feel dumb.
No, I know. I'm
It's
just
all
kidding.
about exposure.
Oh my God.
So I think there's a lot of depth here. That's a different space. And
It's
a work
kind
a
of
lifetime.
overwhelming. So how do people, and that was my question I wrote down on my little book here because my ADHD is strong, but how do you keep from getting overwhelmed? Because I think that's where people stop, is that, okay, this isn't fun anymore, but it's not even really about fun. It's just like, I'm overwhelmed. I don't really know where to go. Like, what kept you going versus just wanting to stop because you maybe didn't have the answers, or you didn't feel like you understood it? Like, what keeps you going? And would you say you're typical or not typical? Because I feel like everybody else is in it for as long as they understand it, as long as they get it, or as long as it feels good, or then they don't want to keep doing the work. Like, I feel like there's only like a certain amount of people who like really want to keep doing the work, and they want to keep getting better, and they want to evolve. And then there's like the rest of everybody who's like, I'm just going to move on to the next thing.
Well, okay. So there's a lot. I have a lot of thoughts about that. So I think that, first of all, the things that are supposed to come across your path do. And so for me, like, this became incredibly illuminating for me. Like, when I
That word.
heard
Illuminating.
the explanation of what's kind of the core motivation for love and why I would behave the way I would in terms of performing, like, all of a sudden there was just this clarity that I had not had before about why I do the things I do. And so for me, wanting to find healing for my own trauma and my own experience, and to not continue making the same choices,
Right.
you have to do the work
Right.
of understanding yourself,
Right.
and understand. Otherwise, you're going to repeat it. If you
I
don't understand your
know.
history, you have to repeat it.
It's like,
So-
that's what they say with like relationships. They're like, okay, you can go
Exactly.
find another relationship.
But you're going to work through that same shit
Yeah.
for the rest of your life.
Or you're going to find the same person because you didn't work through
because you
your
didn't work
shit.
through. And you are the common denominator here. Like, I hate to say that, but yeah.
It is so true. And I feel like people always want to blame the other person. And they're like, oh, it's because he was a narcissist. And oh, it's because he was a horrible person and they don't love me anymore. It's because she wouldn't have sex
and
with
all
me
that
and
might
blah,
be
blah,
true.
blah. And all that might be true, but you're going to go
But
find it
however,
again.
comma space. And yes, it's like
Comma space.
There's like a whole bunch. I'm glad you love that. My massage therapist used to say that all the time, and I'd be like, exactly. You're exactly right. Comma space. And yeah. So if it stops resonating,
Yeah.
then maybe it's not for you. Now, I did do some things like kind of the last couple of years, I felt a bit like a therapy junkie. Like,
Yeah.
like what other therapies can we look at? Can we look at neuroemotional therapy? Yes. Can we go and talk?
What is that neuroemotional
It's
therapy?
muscle
Just real quick.
testing. There's a book called The Body Keeps a Score.
Oh my God. I think I've heard about this a little bit.
Like,
Okay, I'm going to write this down. This is going to be later. We might have to do a little mini series on
there's
this.
a
The
whole
Body
thing.
Keeps Score.
Yeah, so I haven't read that book, but there's a lot of research and science
club.
about
I'm feeling
this.
a book club
Oh my
coming
gosh,
on.
so intense. But like with that one, I needed, like, I've done a lot of talk therapy and I've gone and kind of worked through a lot of things, but NET works at getting down to the things that you don't remember and allowing your body to remember for you.
I don't know if I want to do that.
It's kind of like, sometimes I'll go in and be like, he's like, what kind of question do you have today? What kind of I statement do you need? And I'm like, I don't know, let's just go digging. And he'll start asking some questions and my body will respond with yeses or nos and identifying some things. And it's a whole nother level. So
Nelly.
so it's like, if it doesn't resonate, then it's fine. Like, you don't have to make yourself like go in and learn. But if you're like, no, it's just my ADHD and I'm just, freaking out at the moment. Then I think,
then like circle back around. Circling back around.
I think there's also like really good podcasts out there. Like Ian Crum does one called Typology, and that's really good. There's several others that are really good.
I listened to that one where they did the panel.
Yes.
And I actually found that really, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I found it to be a lot more, it kept my attention, and it also kind of helped me because it was kind of cool hearing the panel of people say, oh yeah,
yes,
I'm a this, and this is how I do it. And then like one of the guys said exactly what you said, which was, sometimes you have to take like an assessment of yourself, like how am I showing up? And do I want this to be how people perceive what my intentions are? Because sometimes our intentions are not perceived that way by our actions. Like say our intentions are one thing. Yeah. So like they're not lining up the way we want them to. Sometimes I have that problem just because I'm very dominant, I'm very direct, and I say what I'm thinking, or I say what I'm thinking right in the moment, which may be a bigger, broader feeling. And then when you really boil it down, it's something related, but not the same. So it's like, oh, you're always doing this or blah, blah, blah. But then when you boil it down, or like, you need to stop doing this because it's going to do that to you and whatever, and you have to boil it down. And I think that we all get stuck in these really broad statements where we're like coming at another person with something, and then they maybe due to the way they perceive the world, like think you're being critical, but you're not, but because you didn't deep dive a little bit deeper and like kind of, I don't know. I'm falling down a really bad rabbit hole right now. So I think perception and doing the work, like you said, is the most important thing because.
And you're not responsible for anybody else's feelings.
Yeah. As long as you're like responsible with yourself.
Yeah. Well, and like I tell my oldest is on the autism spectrum. And so one of the ways that presents itself is he doesn't really understand his, how he comes across in like, I talk about it being like his emotional receptors are very specific. It's either anger or happiness or sadness or boredom, and he doesn't have anything broader than that. And so everything comes through him to him that way, and he also spits it out that way. And so like I'll say to him, "You sound really mad. Like that's kind of offensive." And he's like, "I'm not mad." And I'm like, but it's coming across that way. Now, whose responsibility is it? Because we'll have these discussions about,
this is very smart right now.
He'll say to me, well, you should know that I have trouble with this, so you should make allowances for the fact and assume that I'm not angry. And I would say to him back, yes, and you know this about yourself, so you should also understand that you generally have to dial it down in order for it to be received well. And so like where's the responsibility for that? And I think the responsibility is both in relationship with others. The goal is actually for both of us to be aware of ourselves and our own wounding, and then also giving grace to others and not and actively choosing not to project. So on that score, me projecting is what I call storytelling, and I've done it for years.
Yeah.
And learning a lot about not telling stories. And so if somebody does something to me, I go back to, is this something that they've told me about how they're showing up now? Or am I creating a story? And usually my stories come back to something that I need to do or change to be acceptable in the environment or to make it not happen. Because I'm an achiever, but at the goal, my goal in achieving is to be seen, loved, and recognized. And so I'm trying to earn love and earn acceptance by what I am doing. And it depends on who my audience is.
Sure.
And so, but at the core of that is because I don't feel seen, heard, or loved. And so that's what I have to work with.
That kind of hits.
Oh my gosh. Right?
That one kind of hits.
Yeah.
Is that like, wow, never mind.
There's a whole bunch of stuff.
Wow, that's like pretty intense.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you could really go back and forth. And I think, like you said, it depends on the person because obviously like the mother-child dynamic there because you often have to rise above in the mother-child dynamic.
To teach
yeah,
and equip. And like the goal is for him to be functional in the world outside of the space
but then
of
you
the
still
home.
get frustrated. And, you know, you get at the end of your rope, you're like I'm tapped out here. Like I'm at my end of my rope. Like, you know, how do you recharge from that in those situations? I mean, I think that's where I just get, and that's probably why people stop because they just like get to that point where they're like, okay, I understand all those dynamics, but then like, how do you go out into the world, show up authentically, take accountability for your own actions and your own things, but then also, you know, not just be like, well, I'm not responsible about how I make you feel. You know what I mean? But then also caring about how you make people feel.
Right.
That's like
but that's
really
also
a lot.
about your self-understanding, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like my weakness is over caring about how I make someone else feel. And like, I'm always reading to see how I'm being perceived.
Interesting.
You know?
I feel like my son is like this.
But then like someone else really, their concern is speaking truth into the world. Like they're less concerned about whether or not you feel happy about the truth that's spoken because it's more important that they speak truth.
Okay, so if I am that person, let's just hypothetically, I need to hypothetical this real quick and then we're going to have to take a quick break. So if I hypothetically am like a truth teller and I just say the truth, but it's like hard for people to hear. And that person, a person like you're describing, is more important for them to be, could they like villainize me because it hurts them because they don't want to hear the truth? Or am I really a bad villain because I tell the truth?
I mean,
what's your stance on that? Just
like,
hypothetically.
I think it could be both because if we're talking about health and unhealth, then how are you showing up in the world? Like if you are a truth teller and you know that you're a truth teller, then health is learning how to tell the truth in a diplomatic way that doesn't hurt people, but is still authentically true.
Yeah.
And then if you're in a relationship with someone who very much needs to be seen and felt, hopefully they're doing the work too that helps them learn how to receive things well and is not like, I am having to learn that I am not others referencing. Like I am others referencing. I've been others referencing. So like the other day I had been working with this mantra that says, I am worthy of being loved. You know, and I had to pause and realize that if I say that I am worthy, then that's actually still being other referencing because there's still a metric that I'm having to meet and achieve in order to be considered worthy. And I was like, I need to kind of cut this language around being worthy and just go back to being. Like me existing in who I am is all that I need to be. I don't need someone else to say that I am worthy. I don't even need to strive to be worthy. I just am.
Okay, well, like in that same vein, when you're saying I am worthy of love or I am worthy of this, that, and the other, how does that, what if you took that back to, it's really just all about you loving yourself?
It's 100% about you loving yourself.
So like really,
but like, how do you do that?
Do you not care about other people loving you as much when you go, I love myself, I am enough?
I think that the most healthy people are people who, from a place of loving themselves well, are enabled to love others well because they don't need anything from them and they don't need anything like largely for themselves. Like they've already worked on and gotten to a place where who they are, they're existing fully incarnate in their being without any internal referencing or fear or others referencing or any of that. So if we get to a point when we are loving ourselves and it's selfish, I don't know that we're actually loving ourselves in the way we should. Like, because I think we're still moving into a space of health or unhealth. Like I don't have all the answers on that. I'm still learning.
I just mean like from the sense of not keeping it at the, okay, so moving away from the unhealthy where my value is based on what I do for other people and them loving me, that makes me worthy, into a space where I am worthy all on my own.
Yeah.
And that I love myself because I am enough as I am.
Right.
And I was talking to my therapist about this, and she was saying that like I need to get to a point, and that was actually like my homework for like over the holidays.
Yeah.
Was like I am enough as I am right now.
Yeah.
I don't need to be more for people to love me. And it's like a fascinating thing to think about that you may have been telling yourself this story most all of your life.
Yeah. 100%.
You know, and I think that's where like, that's all tethered to where you don't have the right boundaries with people. I feel like people whose worthiness or their value is tethered to other people, those are the people that really struggle with boundaries.
Yes.
And I would say that the what did you call it? Like the alternate or acting out in a certain way. So I think people who struggle with boundaries sometimes can be really loud and come off that they're really bold and confident and they don't care because it's like a protective thing. So it goes into that self-preservation because your value that you've tethered to other people it's like a rubber band, like it's going to snap back because you're like, oh, they don't like me, so then I must not be worthy, or they're judging me because I didn't do this or I didn't do that, and society says you have to do this in order to be valuable and blah, blah. And I think people get all hung up in this, and I feel like this is a really cool way of kind of keeping yourself in check of where you're going, you know, and what you're doing, because people pleasing, you know, lack of boundaries, or, you know, and then everyone wants to label everyone a narcissist now because you'll find people who are perfectly confident and going around in the world and doing whatever they want. And then the person who's on the other end of that person is the victim, is the one who's suffering. And it's a really fascinating thought that you could really just sit and ponder for a while. Is all of it perception, you know? And I don't know, because I just feel like society gets hung up on stuff sometimes. And then we start.
It becomes popularized and it becomes a soundbite.
Oh my God, for real. Like, and where we've been living in the last couple of years is like ADHD is cool. I'm like, if you had ADHD, you would not think it was cool. I appreciate the levity around it, but it's not fun. And if you lived your whole life being stressed out, anxiety ridden, and dealing with the things that real ADHD people do, then people wouldn't throw it around, just like the OCD. Oh, I'm so OCD. No, you're not. Right. Because if you were OCD, you would friggin' hate it. Right. You feel like a prison sometimes for people who actually have OCD. I know people with OCD. You would not throw that around so much. So I try not to do that. And then like the whole like going around and trying to find people that are narcissists so that you can be a victim or a martyr. I don't know. Like the whole thing is just, it kind of just causes me to sit for a moment and just go, oh my God. Kind of like you feel like you're on an acid trip.
Oh my gosh. I'm not sure what that would feel like.
I have never done acid, but I literally feel like that is what it would feel like. I could never do mind-altering drugs like that because I would probably never come back.
Right. You know, I wonder too, though, like what is like ADHD. I get stuck on things like, well, when we were in an agrarian society, there was a lot of physical labor that was responsible just to make life work.
Right.
And so one of the things that you do to compensate for ADHD is to physically work out, right? You get your body tired, you get those endorphins going, you do all of those things. Well, so how much of this is our societal structure not being in complement with the types of people that we
your
have
body, like
working through, right? And then I think of like people like Einstein, they used to be referred to as eccentric people,
Right.
And there's these people that were hyper focused. They were probably on the autism spectrum,
I know,
and
right?
they have like all these genius and brilliance, and they were more considered odd, or their genius was celebrated. But the culture allowed a little more room for some of that. And
well, it wasn't so seen. Everything is so seen now.
It is seen and homogenized. And, it's the ones that are different that are cut off from the herd and ostracized.
I know.
And then you have, like, there's a whole, this is
God,
another
girl,
rabbit trail.
we could go down the rabbit hole.
Yes.
People are animals.
Well,
try that one on for size. We're freaking animals.
Like, if we want to talk about othering, like, if we want to talk about, like, and this may get me in trouble, but it's like if you want to talk about the Venn diagram that happens across the autism community and the queer community around othering, like, there's some commonality there, and there's some space to be who you are because they are so othered by the mainstream society. And so
I'm not even like hip to what this term even means, othering.
So othering is so it's like being in high school and there's like the popular crowd and then the people that are like pushed off and like not included, and they're weird and they're odd and they're other. They're not a part of group A.
So they're like not the mass.
They're not the mass. And so anytime that you get out of the box of what's accepted and appropriate, then you're kind of othered. And so sometimes you get those people who all feel that way, and then they kind of come together. And so
that's what I was going to say. I feel like that has created community.
It can create community, but I think that like we have lost something of our humanity when we're segmenting and we're saying that you only have to be this one way, or only this is what's fully accepted, And then I think there's also neuroses that come from from our community all being one note, know. And so I don't know. There's so much there
historically for all of time.
Mm-hmm.
How people do this,
it's so because crazy. It's human nature. So
because they're animals, and animals do this to each other, and it's like horrible. And so then we're like evolving as people, and so we're trying to be more aware and evolved.
And I think it still goes back to what did we not feel seen in, or what did we not get when we were young, and what was our coping skill? Because the Enneagram, just to circle back, the Enneagram talks about those coping skills that we developed in order to get what we need. But in doing so, we segmented off into our shadow self what we felt like the people around us couldn't handle about who we are. And so we aren't truly seen until we do this work about going back and giving our little selves space to be seen and heard. From the space now of an adult, being able to go back and say, that really sucked for you. I know why you felt that way. No, this is who you are is beautiful. No, you don't have to be or do this thing in order to get people to see you. No, you don't have to have other people affirm who you are. It's interesting because you mentioned when feeling insecure, being able to be like, I don't need you, kind of get out of it. I don't, and kind of being more bombastic and pushing off. Well, I'm sure you've heard this statement that said hyper independence comes from like trauma, like a hyper independent person comes from a trauma space.
Interesting.
And so like, it can be equally true that instead of it being like, well, I don't need you, it can easily move to the other direction to be like a hyper pleaser in order to compensate for that way. So it's still a coping mechanism for the same wound.
It's still the same thing.
It's just, how is it expressing? And that the Enneagram can talk to you about how is it expressing so that you understand yourself, so you can work and go in and heal yourself and do some of those things.
So what other resources would you, because we'll wrap this one up, because I think this will either be 2 segments or one, I'm not really sure, but what other resources would you say would help someone like on the next Next steps.
There are a series of recordings that are like they're like old school, kind of like somebody set a video camera up in a conference room kind of thing, by a monk named Richard Rohr, and Rohr is like Rhor, I think. Richard Rohr. And so he kind of talks a lot about the different types, and and it's easy and it's accessible and it's winsome. Beatrice Chestnut does a lot of YouTube videos. She actually is the author of this book. This is kind of a little overkill, but if you really I've been really, when I was in this discussion about whether I'm a social 7 or a sexual 3, like diving deep into this, the Complete Enneagram by Beatrice Chestnut. This is like major information on and deep dives. And then I actually like that the Essential Enneagram as a place to start. Like I have come back to Ian Crum and the Road Back to You now that I've been spending a lot of time with it. Like, I think it is really good if it catches your attention. Then it is really good. But this is kind of a different format, and it kind of will have you do kind of a blank little, you read through at the very beginning, and it'll have like some brief descriptions, and you just kind of rate yourself on it. And then it kind of gives you, it's like a little test in a book.
Nice.
But so it'll give you like a little paragraph to read, and you kind of write down, oh yeah, that sounded really a lot like me. Like one says, I'm a sensitive person with intense feelings, and I often feel misunderstood and lonely because I feel different from everyone. And so you'll read these little things.
Fascinating.
And you kind of write down, okay, yeah, number I sounded a lot like me. And then you go back and you see which one I is. And that gives you some places to start.
Nice.
And so
I
this
like
is
that.
a very simple, very accessible book.
Consumable way,
Yeah,
too.
for sure. And then Typology podcast is really good.
Was that the one I listened to?
I think that's one of the ones that I
you
sent
sent
you.
me one.
I think, did I send you one on an 8?
Yeah.
I think I was.
I think it was. Is that the one that's like kind of like more just like a dominant personality or something?
So there are 3 that are, so there's another thing. There's the assertive stance and the withdrawing stance. And then there's the one in the middle that's kind of like in between. And so there's 3 types that are assertive: an 8, a 7, and a 3. And
8, 7, and 3.
Yeah. And
that makes sense, because I think I tested 3 too.
And so a 7 and a 3 look alike a lot.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so
that makes sense.
And so for me to sit and try and, struggle through.
Who can like help you through? You said you had an Enneagram coach. Like, how did you find that person?
The universe brings people to you. I'm telling you, when you need it, it shows up. So her name is Leslie Hirschberger, and she's here in town. Yeah. And she's been a coach for years.
Oh, Leslie, another Leslie.
I know, another Leslie, right? And so
I have so many Leslies in my life. So how does that Leslie spell her name? L-E-S-I-E.
L-E-S-L-I-E, and then Hirschberger. And so, and she has people that she can also refer you to do typing. And so she actually had some classes that I went to that were like small group kind of coming in like during the end of COVID, and then kind of in this last year she'll do different classes that I've gone into and those have been kind of amazing. She does a lot of embodiment work.
Embodiment work. I love that word.
So the other thing is, again, trying to balance the head, heart, and the body. Like,
balance the head,
heart, and the body.
Okay. Because
one of the things too is that I had been taught that I couldn't trust what I was sensing in my body.
Is that from trauma?
It's from religious upbringing.
Okay, I feel that. We'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, and then yeah, for sure. And then have
you ever seen that guy? My fundamentalist church in the 90s.
Oh my gosh,
that guy.
No, I don't know who that is.
I swear to God, he's
but
so
I
funny.
Probably need to find him because
we'll talk about it when we get off here. I'm going to show you that video. Don't forget.
Yes. But so it's
God.
So she does a lot of trying to help reconnect when you've disconnected. So I disconnected from my feelings. I disconnected from my body. I was using my mind because that was the only thing I could trust. But yet the things that I was trusting in my mind were actually things that were being given to me by a highly structured environment. And so now I'm having to learn to access those things. So, and that's all Enneagram work too. So lots lots.
I love it.
Lots and lots.
I think we have more, so we'll have to
Oh my gosh.
sit together and write like a little structured
we can talk.
chatty chat and
Like,
talk
all
some
of
more.
it. It's so
I
good.
know, if it didn't
Oh my
take you
gosh.
too far off, for too far long, I'm going to cough, so I'm going to totally shut this down now. But thank you for coming, because my allergies, something got me, and now I'm about ready to start going to one of my Tiffany coughing fits.
It's like you just gave me a forum to talk, and I am a performer. And so
I love it.
do like to talk.
I love
about
it.
things that I
well,
like.
we're going to talk about other things too. I
love
took
it.
some notes.
It's so good.
Well,
It's so
thank
good.
you.
You're
I'm going to stop it
welcome.
now. All right, bye.